genre, the stories of love. Now, love can show up in many different ways. It can be a gentle kiss on the forehead, it can be the forearm across the gut when the car stops suddenly, or it can tell you when there's spinach in your teeth. Tonight's storytellers will ins- inspire and encourage you. They are very well practiced and they will cause your heart to go pitter patter. So sit back or stand if you are into that and drink in tonight from the cup of love. Our first storyteller is a SAC, it's part of the SAC genre series, and also our tech host, Parvati Agrawal. And her quote about love is not about finding someone perfect, it's about seeing an imperfect person perfectly. And
Mm.
here she is with her story entitled The Bicycle Ride.
Hello, everyone. So, this is a very special story. I came across it a few days back, and then I asked Ed that, can I please tell it? And thankfully, I got the spot. So, this is a true story and based in the year 1975. The world was not fast that time, it was very slow. Love traveled by post, and dreams waited for weeks to be answered. And if you miss someone, you really miss them. That's it. And in those times, there was a 19-year-old student from a royal family in Sweden, uh, going by the name Charlotte von Sledwin. She was going about her way, and she one day heard whispers about a young artist in India. Not a famous one, not a wealthy one, but a very rare artist. His name was Pradyumna Kumar Mahanandia, and he was born into one of the poorest communities in India, and he belonged to a caste which was considered to be untouchable that time. So you can imagine that he did not have any opportunities, but art stood for him. And he had a special way of painting. People said, sorry, there was somebody coming in. So people said that sitting before him was uncomfortable at first because he wouldn't start painting right away. He would begin by observing. He would sit quietly, watch how you're breathing, how the light is falling on your face, noticing the hesitation in your smile, and the way your expressions came on your face. He didn't flatter people, he would just paint the truth. And his portraits spoke. When travelers would look at those paintings, those portraits, they felt that that person was looking back at them. It was not the face that was painted, but the soul that was captured. And Charlotte wanted that. So, for the first time in her life, she thought that, okay, I'm gonna take this trip. She boarded a plane, traveled alone to India because she wanted to be seen as herself, not as a royal family person, a student, not as a lineage. She wanted to see herself. And when she came there, there was no grand studio waiting for her. It was a very modest place, just oil paints. This man, soft spoken, very thoughtful, with color on his hands. And when Charlotte sat down for the first time, Pradyum didn't touch the brush for the entire day. He just simply looked at her, not at her crown, not at her fineries. He just looked at her eyes, and he could see that strength that she carried in herself, that loneliness that lingered beneath her composure, and the quiet curiosity. And slowly, layer by layer, he started painting. He painted not the shape of her face, but the stillness. And when finally he showed that portrait, Charlotte had no words. Because for the first time in her life, she felt that somebody had seen her, not being royal, but just, you know, real. And something shifted between them. They fell in love, and where she had planned to stay a few days, it turned into weeks, months, and finally they got married. Uh, but the twist is always there. That is why it becomes a story. And so Charlotte had to leave back for India, for London, for completing her studies. And suddenly, love stretched across thousands of miles. They wrote letters, long ones, waited for weeks to receive those letters. And finally, she missed him so fiercely, she said that, I'm going to book your ticket and I will buy your ticket. You just come to me. But Pradyum said, no, I, uh, I love you, but I do not want charity. I will come to you, I promise, but on my own. So he completely decided. He sold off everything that he owned, and with the money that he got, it was not enough for a airfare. He could just afford a second hand bicycle. Now, Sweden, thousands of kilometers away, everyone was saying it was impossible, but he packed some of his brushes, rolled up his canvases, and decided that he will go. He began to ride across India, across Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Turkey, and into Europe. Around 8 countries, more than 4 months. There were days of scorching heat, nights under open skies, borders that were questioning him, and lonely stretches of road which just made him doubt. Sometimes he painted along the way for food, and sometimes he rode until his legs wouldn't go any further. Sometimes he would think of turning back, but then he would remember the young woman who had crossed the world to be seen. How could he not return to her? And so he pedaled. And finally, when he reached Sweden, Charlotte opened the door, saw him standing there. They did not speak. There were just tears, just arms that refused to let go. And in that moment, she realized that, he had traveled across all continents and honored his word, his promise. In today's world, I see love is very quick. We have quick messages, fights, quick divorces, quick breakups. But I think the love is like the speed of a bicycle, slow, steady, faithful. And I think, yeah, that's my story. Thank you.
That was very nice. Arms that refuse to let go. That's so powerful. Our next storyteller is Magna Bat from the Asian American Storytelling Association, AASIA. And her favorite quote about love is, I love myself, the quietest, simplest, most powerful revolution ever. And here she is with her story, Love in Motion.
Good evening, everyone. So, my story goes back to July in the late 1980s. I am a middle schooler in Mumbai, India. I'm seated in my school bus wearing my school uniform and black leather rain boots. As we are on our way to this all girls convent school where I studied, I look out of these big bay bus windows. It is raining like a full Bollywood movie climax scene. Melodramatic, loud, and absolutely refusing to end. The scent of the earthy, rain soaked soil drifts up our bus windows, something every Mumbai or Indian kid knows by heart. Looking through the rain, I relive how my mom, a high school math teacher in the same school, was pleasantly surprised seeing that I was genuinely enthusiastic to attend school that day. Why was she surprised, you may ask? Growing up with a chronic health condition, my parents often saw me struggle with learning, socializing, and focusing in class. But today, I feel different. Nobody is going to steal my thunder, literally and figuratively. You know why? Because today, I am wildly excited to audition for a dance concert at school. Our school principal has been invited to send middle school students to perform at another school's annual celebration 3 months from now. Now, normally this neurodivergent kid can barely sit still in class, but dance, oh my goodness. Dance is my Red Bull before even Red Bull existed. Dance is the one place where my body and brain have a love language. Thanks to growing up in a cinephile and music lover family, my sibling, my cousins, and I enjoyed watching and imitating some of the famous dance steps of our Bollywood Indian actresses. While I'm lost in the monsoon magic, daydreaming about the audition, and suddenly a crack of thunder snaps me right back into my seat. We have reached school. Later in school, at the audition, about 20 of us girls perform a sequence choreographed by an alumni student. The school principal, who is a nun, and a senior teacher watch us closely, whispering to each other. I tell myself, Meghna, you are not a trained dancer, but you have taken aerobics and modern dance classes. You have performed in elementary school. Maybe you have a chance. And then they start calling out the names of students selected for the show. My heart is pounding like the Mumbai thunderstorms. After saying out 14 names, my school principal announces, and finally, Meghna, you have all been selected for the dance show. Wait, what? Did they really say my name? I am beyond exhilarated. I run home and announce it like breaking news to my parents and my grandparents, like I have won the Powerball lottery. Because for me, being selected was being someone beyond the labels of a slow learner and behind in class. I can be good at something. I can make my family proud. Over the next few weeks, we practiced twice a week, during breaks and after school. The dance choreography includes some steps from modern music, Bollywood dance, and pop music. I work hard. I come home and practice more than I can focus on my studying. I shamelessly perform my routine for my parents and grandparents, whether they want to see it again and again or not. One afternoon during rehearsal, I notice the school principal walking by. She pauses and points in my direction and says something to our dance supervisor. My heart races. I dance like my life depends on it. 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. I am in sync. I feel confident and happy. Before we disperse, the choreographer says, "We will finalize your places tomorrow in the main show." So far, I'm in the first row. I wonder where they'll place me. The next day, of course, I enthusiastically arrive early in school. And as I walk down the hallway towards the rehearsal room, I hear voices. My school teacher and the principal are talking. I stop much before that classroom to avoid eavesdropping. But what none of us realize that voices in a silent school hallway travel further whether you want them to or not. And I hear my teacher say, "Meghna dances really well." Oh my goodness, I'm quietly jumping in excitement in that hallway, trying not to get their attention. And then our school principal continues, "Yes, Meghna dances really beautifully. But since Meghna has put on some weight, it might not look aesthetic to have her in the front row. Maybe we should move her to the back or replace her with someone slender." My heart drops straight to the bottom of my stomach. I freeze, and before I can process, tears fill up my eyes. I run to the restroom so no one sees me crumble. Standing there within the four walls, I cannot understand the connection. What does my body size or weight have to do with my ability to dance? Didn't you just say that my dance was really good? Didn't like I may not be perfect, and sometimes, yes, I may lag a few seconds behind, but I have the rhythm, I have the energy, and baby, I know my dance moves. Wait, have my parents been lying to me that I dance well? I wipe my face, take a deep breath, and walk into rehearsal as if nothing has happened. They move me to the back row. It wasn't about the placement, but the rationale behind it. Swallowing the feeling of being ashamed, finish the rehearsal. And later that evening, I casually tell my mom. Her eyes well up instantly. And for a moment, I wonder, oh goodness, she's not proud of me anymore. But my mom holds my hand and says, "Megs, bacha," which means kid, "you have rhythm and joy. You have an inner light when you dance, just like your favorite Bollywood actress, Madhuri Dixit, whose dance and presence makes you happy. You may not know all the dance moves and you may have a lot to learn, but don't let this stop you." I hold on to her words and I dance my heart out at this concert a month later. 200% of myself on that stage with full love and joy. But the conversation between the principal and the teacher sticks with me like a sour, rancid lemon. And in hindsight, this is not sad. This isn't sadly the first time when adults, teachers, aunties, and uncles had pointed out to my body or weight. Whether I was in my undernourished, scrawny weight version or my thyroid related puffiness, adults who showed that discomfort with my weight gain or weight loss by commenting on my body. The funny, ironic part is, I had not been ashamed of my body or weight until these adults taught me to. But wait, here's the twist. Don't feel bad for me. Thanks to my mom and Madhuri Dixit, my favorite Bollywood actress again, I learned that if I love learning dance and have the rhythm, I am enough. Those adults who shamed me don't know one thing. Despite all the cracks thrown at me, I am unstoppable on the dance floor. I still somehow find or found an inner flame to reclaim my love and joy for dance, the flame that reignites and does basically refuses to get extinguished. And this comes from the love for younger Meghna, who kept moving away when the world tried to shrink her. So unapologetically, I kept dancing, taking up space. And like the Mumbai, if the Mumbai monsoons or rainy season has taught me anything, it is this. It pours like there is no tomorrow. So I dance like today is my last day. Because nobody can steal my love for dance and the thunder, literally and figuratively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me just say one thing. Kid, you still have rhythm and joy. So let's move on to our next storyteller, Chip Powell from the Sacramento Storytellers Guild. And his statement is, love is when you give someone else the power to destroy you and you trust them not to do it. Here he is with his story, Barbara, or the best advice I ever got. Now to you.
Thank you, Camille. I was going to try to hide my own self because I find it distracting, but it's not working. That's okay. I'll pretend I'm looking in a mirror. Thank you all for having me. The first person who ever loved me was my mother. And maybe that's the same for some of you. I hope so. My mom died when I was in my 20s, and I miss her every day. But she gave me the best advice that I ever received. It's 1986. I'm 16 years old. I live in Los Angeles, and I meet Barbara. Barbara is an amazing girl about my age. We kind of run in the same larger social circle down there. And we have this amazing, incredible friendship. We're just like one mind. We laugh at each other's jokes. We finish each other's sentences. We actually end up making out one day, but that doesn't really last or change our friendship. 2 or 3 years later, however, we're 18, 19 years old. We do actually begin an official romance. We become boyfriend and girlfriend. And Barbara has a fiery personality. You most notice this when she's driving a car. For example, we work together at a hospital in Pasadena, and when there's bumper to bumper traffic on the 134, she will drive, no joke, 90 miles an hour in the emergency lane just to get us to work on time. And I'm terrified, of course. That's just who she is. We each pitched in $200 and bought just a piece of junk of a car once. And I don't really know how cars work, but there's something wrong with the horn, right? There was some wire that was crossed in the steering column. And every time you turn the wheel, the horn would beep a little bit, like beep, 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 beep. So if you're behind someone turning a corner, like they think you're honking at them, beep, beep, beep. And I would be mortified, and I would want to hang out the window and say, sorry, we're not honking at you. Barbara didn't care. She didn't give a damn. Well, one day I thought I would do us both a favor, and I popped the hood and I found the wire you could disconnect to turn the horn off altogether. And I said, babe, guess what? I fixed the horn. She said, oh, great. And then she drove the car and said, what do you mean you fixed the horn? I can't honk at anybody. Hook it back up. She couldn't go a single day without honking at someone else. Some poor soul who had, garnered her wrath. And that person was often me, not in a car. But because the thing about Barbara and me was we were, as much as we loved each other, and I think she may be the love of my life, but we were like oil and water. We were like fire and gasoline. As much as we love each other, we can't find a way to get along. She has a fiery temper. She has a hair trigger temper. I am argumentative and stubborn and self-centered, and we just clash and we clash and we clash. And as high as the highs are, the lows are very low. Eventually, I moved from LA to Sacramento to go to college, to go to UC Davis, but we stay together. But in one of our trips to visit each other, it becomes too much. It becomes too much for both of us, and we break up. We finally break up, and we're about 20 years old at this point. And we're both devastated by this, but we still have that friendship, that core of our friendship that we had for so long. And we keep talking to each other on the phone from LA to Sacramento. We talk, once or twice a week, and we laugh and we compare notes, how life is going. And I just realized it's this person that I love so much. It's not the romantic partner. It's this friend that I'm so grateful I still have. Now, as time goes on, I realize I actually miss the romantic part too. And I have a trip upcoming to LA over my spring break, and I figured, well, I'll see Barbara. We'll get together. It's Chip and Barbara. It's Barbara and Chip. Of course, we're going to get back together. But I realized the phone calls start slowing down a little bit, and I figured, well, she's just busy. And about a month goes by, and I leave her a couple messages on her answering machine, and I don't think that much of it. I wonder what's going on. Eventually, she does call me, and I say, "Hey, stranger, how have you been? Been busy lately, huh?" She says, "I need to tell you something." I said, "Oh, okay." She says, I need you to sit down. Wow, okay. And I can hear her kind of take a deep breath and summon up her courage. She waits about 10 seconds and she says, "I got married." I said, "What? When?" She said, "About a month ago in Las Vegas." I said, "To who? I know everyone you know. Who?" She's like, "You don't know him." And to say that I'm destroyed is an understatement. I feel like every part of my body that makes me alive, my heart, my soul, my gut, just falls out of me. And I've become this like shell of a person. I don't know how to live. I'm not suicidal. I just don't know how to live. I stop eating for a while, lose 25 pounds that I can't afford to lose. I'm a skinny 20-year-old. And as the weeks and months go by, my mom sees how destroyed I am. And I don't live with her, but we spend a lot of time together. And I tell her what's going on and about Barbara. And she says, "Chip, I'm going to share something with you. And this is the best advice I've ever received in my life." She says, there's a part of you, and it's your core, it's your spirit. It's even deeper than your heart. That part of you inside in the center of you, that part of you can never be hurt, ever. I'm like, "Whoa, Mom, that's heavy." Okay. But I felt that. And it sustained me, and it helped me get through the next few weeks, the next few months. I start moving on with my life here in Sacramento. I get a phone call one day, and I answer, it's Barbara. I say, "Oh, how's married life?" She says, I got divorced." "What?" She says, "Yeah, it was an impulsive decision." Well, duh, yeah. If you know Barbara, you know this about her. I said, "I was half on the rebound because of you anyway." And we have a great laugh about it. Now, I've got a new girlfriend at this point up in Sacramento. She's dating someone down in LA, but we have our friendship back, and it makes me so happy. And we maintained this friendship for 30 years. We each end up getting married eventually to other people. She moves to the East Coast. I get married. I have kids. She has kids, and we keep this close friendship. And she's my favorite person in the world to this day. And nothing inappropriate. Not looking for any romance. I just love her so much. She comes out to my wedding. She flies out when my first son is born. I visit her whenever I'm on the East Coast. My family meets her. And then life happens. She ends up divorced again and raising children. Several years later, I get divorced. And for the first time in over 30 years, we are both single at the same time, even though we're 3,000 miles away. And it doesn't take long. We get back together romantically as boyfriend and girlfriend, long distance. I take many trips to the East Coast. She takes many trips out here. We meet in New York City one time. And it's the same damn thing. She has a hair trigger temper. I am stubborn and argumentative and self-centered, and we still can't get along. And it's just too much. And we break up again in our late 40s, 50 years old, 50, 51 years old. And we try to stay friends after this, but it doesn't quite work. And she gets very angry at me about something I actually don't remember. I actually don't know what, but now years go by and we don't speak at all. And I miss her. I miss my best friend so much. I love her so much. I know we can't ever be romantic partners again, but I miss her. I love her with all of my heart, the human being that she is. Finally, about a year ago, like last year, I texted her. I just said, this is after years of no contact. I said, Barbara, is there a world where you and I could be friends? And I was overjoyed. A couple hours later, she texts me back and she says, I think so. We make arrangements. We talk on the phone about a week later, and we have a nice conversation. We talk for about an hour or so, mostly about kids, work, and both of our guard is up a little bit. But it's so good to hear her voice. It's so good to have my friend back. About a week later, I text her. I say, it was great talking to you last week. Good luck with that thing you were telling me about. If you want to catch up some other time, let me know. And I get no response. My birthday comes and goes. I don't get a text from her. I text her on her birthday. This is just a couple months ago. It's happy birthday. And she does reply. She says, thank you. I text her. I say, hey, if you want to talk again sometime, I'm open to that. I don't get any reply at all. And I see the time as I'm about to wrap up. I think she's done. I think she's done with this friendship. That's all I can presume. I won't reach out to her again. I don't want to bug her or bother her. If she reaches out to me, fine. But I miss her. I miss my best friend, and it hurts. It hurts a lot. And I remember the advice that my mom gave me, that core part of my spirit, even deeper than my heart, that can never, ever be hurt. And it brings me comfort today, the same way it comforted that young man. My mom's been gone for 30 years. And I still heed the advice of the first person who ever loved me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank God for good mothers. Now, our next storyteller is John Michaud from Six Feet Apart Productions. And his quote is, "Love is like a fairy book story." Here is John with The Ring.
Just
Oh,
a
sorry.
second. Ed has raised his hand. Ed, do you want to say something? No. Okay. Okay. Then it must be by mistake.
So I was 9 years old when Star Wars came out in 1977, and I was hooked. That silver screen acted like a gateway drug, and my world became something seen through the lens. And when it comes to love, true love, you can't beat The Princess Bride. And in the end credit roll, we finally get to hear the lyric to that reoccurring love theme that played throughout the music. Our love is like a storybook story. It's as real as the feelings I feel. And such is the life I live with my wife, Debbie. Now, I could have been on the forest moon of Endor. The booths at the Oregon Country Fair put me in mind of the treetop cities of the Ewoks, only at ground level, which suited me so much better. It's the home outside Eugene, Oregon, on a wooded wetland that floods each winter. And because of this, there are no permanent structures there. Everything is renewed each year through no-nail sustainable methods. And the fair attracts a loyal following who attend the entire 3-day event as if it were a cross between a music festival and a family reunion, where everyone there is family, including you. It's pretty magical. Now, I was going booth to booth, searching for the handful of jewelers peppered along the paths. Now, her friends would say this was a little bit fast, and I suppose from the outside it would look that way. This was the first week of July. I was news to them back in March. I'd found her again through classmates.com, and over those few months we had some epic telephone conversations, the kind of 4 to 6 hour marathons that rivaled the phone calls during our first time together back in high school. This school happens to be the same Castle High School in Tacoma, Washington, where they filmed 10 Things I Hate About You a few years after our graduation. We'd met on the school paper. I took pictures, she handled the words as the print editor, and she could convert my unconventional spellings back into standard English after deciphering it from handwriting which resembled the doctor's scrawl. And this ability to draw comprehension from my illegible scratches and other odd utterances portended our lasting compatibility. Our homes, being distanced from each other, outside of school hours, all we had was the phone. And those calls took place back in the days when the phone was still physically connected to the wall, and the handsets had this long cord that would be dragged under the bedroom door. Those conversations about nothing and everything, schemes and dreams were bandied about and ruminated over as we contemplated our futures. And on a late night, after a long lead up about the inequities of gender roles, I cajoled her into proposing to me. That engagement was never officially terminated. We lasted from the middle of our sophomore year in high school into Debbie's second year of college. What doomed us was distance. 29 cents a minute was more than either of us could afford to maintain the kind of phone habits our relationship was built on. So we went our ways, and the years passed. I flew out of Burbank on the 4th of July in 2003 on my birthday pilgrimage to see family and friends in the Pacific Northwest. She had a work meeting she had to be at on Friday, but she could take Monday off, so the plan was made for her to join me at the fair for the weekend in the RV that I had rented. This obligation of hers was the twist of fate that afforded me the opportunity to have this day to go on my quest. And at last I found it. It was a natural stone, cut and polished in a flat surface. Its face looked like it could have been a detail painted by Monet. I loved it. But would she? I wasn't sure about her ring size either, so I hatched a plan. I would get a stand-in, a stunt double, if you will. That same jeweler had a hammered silver ring, so beautiful in its simplicity. I guessed at her size and bought it right on the spot. That Saturday, Deb joined me at the fair. The aroma from the food booths became my system of olfactory navigation as we wandered the wooded paths. The fair was its magical self, with a cornucopia of performance stages, wandering performers, and participatory art. Well fed from the fair's food offerings, we didn't need to cook when we got back to the RV that night. So with my heart racing, out came the ring. I said, back when we were teenagers, you once proposed to me. If that offer still stands, I'd like to take you up on it. And at this point, the boom, boom, boom of my heart pounding came to a screeching halt as I waited on her reaction. And it took an eternity. At least it felt like that. At first, it was just a hint of a smile. But it wasn't until she verbalized her affirmative that my heart returned to its regularly scheduled rhythm. Sunday at the fair, we found our way to the booth of the jeweler with that perfect ring I found on Friday. As if it were some test out of a fairy tale, Debbie started to look through the rings on offer, and as if it was fated by the Norns themselves, she chose the ring I had picked out for her. But unlike Cinderella, this ring was not a perfect fit and would have to be sized for her. So I paid the artist, who took her measurements and our address and, well, congratulating us on our joy. And after lunch, with the silver stand-in ring on her hand, we set out for the dunes of the Oregon coast. It took a little longer than anticipated. We arrived just before sunset and couldn't find the campgrounds. We decided we don't need a campgrounds. We've got a fully equipped RV. So before we wound up missing the last of the sunset in progress, we pulled off along a spot on the road and raced up to the top of a dune. The beach went on for miles to the south and for miles to the north, just rolling dunes of sand with a couple 100 yards stretching out to the ocean. And this big, ball of fire sinking into the sea, with this big orange harvest moon rising up above the horizon like the moon on the Joe versus the Volcano movie poster. You just pop an extra sun in there and we could have been on Tatooine. Now, just as the sun dips below the horizon, with not a single electric light to disturb the oncoming darkness, suddenly, that silver ring, the stunt double ring, dropped from her finger into the sand. I hear the panic in her voice as she shouts, "No!" Scenes from Dune flash through my head as I remember that digging through the sand is a recipe to lose your gear. So as I see her start to drop down and begin her search, I shout, "Wait! Wait, 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 wait!" And I begin feeling around my pockets, and there, good geek that I am, in my breast pocket I found a pen, which I placed as a flag in the sand by where Deb stood, and said, "Let's come back tomorrow in the light, before we end up burying it here in the dark." Reluctantly, she agreed this was sensible. Now, back in the RV, I learned a very important life lesson. I had tried to console Debbie. I told her, "This is just a stand-in ring. Your real engagement ring is coming in the mail." That didn't fly. And this is when I learned that sentiment is attached to the object that is present in the moment. I woke to a shout, shout, shout at the crack of dawn with Debbie telling me, "It's time!" So we set out on a parallel path that let us approach the beach side from below the spot where the ring slipped from her hand. And there, about 1.5 feet from the pen, it was as an elvish team of set dressers prepared the scene in the night, for the morning sun shone in a glim off a wee bit of silver, half emerged from the sand as if the beach itself were its ring box. Then I pan up from the ring to see the smile break across Deb's face with a gleam that outshone that ring. There, like Bilbo Baggins, a ring that had been lost had been found. The one ring to rule my heart. We've now had 22 years of married adventures together, with no end in sight. For our love is like a storybook story. It's as real as the feelings we feel. I can't tell you about happily ever after, but I would say fairy tales do come true. Thank you.
That was really good. 22 years of marriage with no end in sight. Oh, that's beautiful. So, just for a second, I do the shameless plug for donations for the SAC storytelling. If anybody would like to donate for the cause and the hard working, there it is right there. She has it up there too. And or if you are interested in being a storyteller in any of the upcoming genre series, you can contact me and I'll contact Ed, or you can just contact Ed, who is right here tonight in our audience. Next month is Myths and Fables, Fantasy and Fairy Tales. Okay, so now for our next storyteller, it is Karen Golden from the Community Storytellers. Her quote is, "I love you. Not only..." Whoa, I don't know what's happening. Can you hear the echo? Can I keep going? Okay. I'll say it again. Her quote is, "I love you. Not only for what you are, but for what I am when I am with you." And here's her story entitled "The Nightingale and the Dove."
Thank you. It is so wonderful to be with all of you this evening, sharing stories of love. So I'd like to change it up a little bit and share with you a fairy tale. And this is a fairy tale that was originally sung as a ballad in Judeo-Spanish. It's a Jewish Spanish-speaking fairy tale from Greece. And the story goes like this. Once there was a king and a queen and a beautiful princess who lived in a palace by the sea. The queen was a stepmother to the princess. Her real mother had passed away many years before, and her father, the king, thought that this woman would make an ideal mother for the princess, but little did he know that this step queen was intensely jealous of his daughter. She feared that someday the daughter would marry, have a son who would become king, and take over the kingdom and oust her from the throne. Now, this king had a fondness for going off into battle for months at a time, and so it was that on one of these excursions, the queen was looking after the princess. She didn't want her to date because she didn't want her to fall in love. And every time a suitor came to the door, she would look out the keyhole and she would say, "The princess is indisposed. The princess cannot come out." And she sent the princess up to her room. The princess spent hours in her room knitting and sewing, and so it was on one of these occasions that she heard a sound from around the beach. Lie, la, la, lie, lie, lie. La, lie, la, lie, lie, lie. It was the sound of a young man singing, and she knew the song, so she joined right in. Lie, la, lie, lie, la, 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 lie. When the young man heard her voice, he turned and looked, and he saw her standing in the window, and he noticed how beautiful she was and what a great voice she had, and his heart began to flutter. The next day he returned, lie, la, lie, 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 and she joined in, la, lie, la, lie, lie, lie. Could it be that she loved him like he loved her? Oh, but he could never have her. He said to himself, "I am but a poor student studying to be a cantor." That's a singer in the synagogue. "I will never make enough money to have one such as her as my wife." But he continued singing, and she continued singing. And the next morning at breakfast, she was sitting and eating with her stepmother, when the stepmother said, "Dearie, did you hear the sound of the mermaids last night?" "Oh, Mama, that wasn't a mermaid, that was me singing." "What? You were singing? But who was the voice of the man?" "Oh, that man was a young man sitting at the beach." "You must never fall in love with that man. If he comes back here, it will be off with his head. And if you care to join him, it will be off with yours. Now go to your room." She was sent to her room. And that's when she started knitting and knitting, and she realized she had to do something. And so she took off her princess ring, she put it into her handkerchief, and she threw it out of the window. The young man was walking along the beach. Lie, la, la, lie, la. And that's when he found the handkerchief. He opened it and he looked inside. He knew exactly who had thrown that handkerchief because it was monogrammed with T.P. That's not T.P., that's the princess. And his heart began to flutter even more. It was indeed love. Now she really had to come up with a plan. She decided to write a note. And so she wrote, "Dear," I don't know your name, "dear singing young man, meet me at the bottom of the tower tomorrow when the moon rises. Love," no, not love. Love is too strong a word. "Heavy like the princess." And she rolled up the note. She put it into another one of those princess handkerchiefs, and she threw it out the window. The young man walked along the beach. Lie, la, lie. And that's when he found the note. And the very next day, he went to the tower, and there she was, climbing down the tower. When the two of them saw each other, both of their hearts went pitter-patter, and then their feet began to go pitter-patter, 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 waking the queen. She said, "There's an intruder in the garden." Guards, seize them! The guards went out into the garden, caught the princess and the young man, and threw them into the dungeon. The next morning, the queen went to see who were the intruders. It was the princess and a young man. She said to the guards, "It will be off with their heads." They were led to the seashore. They were made to kneel on the sand, and the executioner took out a long, sharp knife and put it on their heads, and was just getting ready to lower it when the princess turned into a nightingale, and the young man turned into a dove. "Catch them," said the queen. The guards came with nets, caught the two birds, threw them into the dungeon, and the queen said, "It will be off with their heads in the morning." They were led to the shore. They were made to lay their heads on the beach, and the executioner took out his long, sharp knife, and he was just getting ready to lower it when the nightingale turned into a perch, and the dove turned into a flounder. I'm a flounder. "Catch them for my dinner." The two fish were caught in a net. They were brought into the kitchen of the palace. They were filleted. They were coated in flour, and then they were prepared almondine, the queen's favorite. She said, "Now I will certainly have these too." She put her fork up to her lips, and right at that moment, a bone got stuck in her throat. "Help! Help! Who knows the Heimlich maneuver?" She realized she had not sent anyone on her staff for first aid training, and no one knew the Heimlich maneuver. The princess and the young man, who were now the bones on her plate, they remained there, but she was gone. The guard thought that perhaps the king would like to know where his daughter was buried, and so the two bones were brought out to the garden. He dug a hole and he buried them, and as soon as they hit the soil, out popped a carnation and a rose. And they rose higher and higher and higher and higher. Well, he also buried the queen, but nothing grew from her grave. There was a stenchy, stinky smell that rose, and they say that the smell was there for months, if not years. But the carnation and the rose, they intertwined themselves with each other, and you could not tell one flower from the other. And when they opened their blooms, oh, the fragrance of those two flowers. They say that the fragrance of the flowers lasted for eternity. And if you bend down and you put your ear up to those two flowers, and the wind is just right, you will hear loo, 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 shh, loo, 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 loo. And that is the nightingale and the dove.
Thank you so much, Karen. I really enjoyed all your sound effects there, so really appreciate that. So our next storyteller is Nick Smith with Inland Valley Storytellers, and the title of his story is The Blue Rose. Nick.
Now, you may wonder why Camille didn't give a quotation about love that, like the other tellers, gave her. And that's because this story taught me that love isn't easily summarized. You see, once, long ago, there was a king. And this king, because he was a good king, loved his nation and the people that he ruled. And because he was a good father, he loved his daughter and tried to do everything for her. And because he loved the rose garden that he hoped to retire to someday, he paid special attention to that, for he loved the idea of being able to turn the kingdom over to his daughter. But you see, there was a problem. In the traditions of his land, a queen could rule the nation, but only by being married to assure that there would be a next generation. And his daughter refused to marry. And the reason that she refused to marry was, in her words, I don't have anybody I'm in love with, and I refuse to marry unless I'm in love. Well, but but if you never marry, nope, 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 I'm not going to marry until I'm in love. And the king tried to persuade her that this was really important that she marry so she could become the queen. And she said, nope, nope, nope. Now, she'd been getting her way ever since she was a child, and so there was little he could do except try to persuade her, and he kept at it and kept at it. And finally she said, fine, if you let me choose the conditions, I will marry. And the king was overjoyed because this would be for his people and his daughter. She said, I will marry. And the courtiers gathered around because this sounded important. I will marry the man who brings me a blue rose. Well, the king was stunned, and the courtiers all began chattering in the background because nobody had heard of roses coming in the color blue. And the king said, aren't you asking the impossible? And she said, no, I'm asking for a blue rose. And so the royal word went out. The princess would marry the man who would bring her a blue rose. Now, the rose garden was in the care of an old gardener that the king had picked many years ago, assisted by his younger son. And the king said, is there such a thing as a blue rose? And the gardener laughed and said, of course not. The word went out, and courtiers came to treat the princess with their idea of a blue rose. One of the finest artists in the land brought a painting of a blue rose. Now, you must understand that this princess, because of her father's rose garden, had spent much time there, and one of the things she enjoyed was having butterflies around her as she went through her daily routine. And it was one of the butterflies who stopped the princess from making a terrible mistake, because she would have just sent the painter away and insulted him, but instead it gave her an excuse. For you see, the butterfly saw the painting of a blue rose, and it flew toward the rose and tried to land on it, and instead slid down the painting because there was no rose, only an image of one. And the princess said, aha, the butterfly understands. You have brought me a beautiful painting of a blue rose, but I asked for a blue rose, and nothing else will do. The artist went away very sadly. But the next person who brought a possibility for the princess was a craftsman, and he had made out of the finest blue jade a rose carved so thin that the petals were no thicker than a rose's petals in a box. And when he opened it, everybody who looked was stunned. This was a thing of beauty. And the princess looked, and one of the butterflies again was near her and saw a blue rose in the box and dove and landed on it. And instead of the soft, sweet petals of a rose, it was hard and stone and cold. And the butterfly flew away. And the princess said, Do you see? This is a fine carving in imitation of a rose, but it is not a blue rose. And the craftsman went away sadly. Ah, but a rich man had a clever plan. He had a rose, a blue rose made of silk. And he even thought ahead because he got the finest attar of roses, the oil that is used to make things smell like a rose in perfume. And he put drops of that in the center of the rose where the nectar of a rose would be, and presented this to the princess. And even the princess was stunned at this replica. But once again, one of the butterflies flew down and landed on it and walked across the silken petals of the rose and went to taste the nectar at the center of the rose. And it was awful because the attar of roses may smell like a rose, but it's bitter and stings the tongue. And the princess said, "You see, this is a beautiful thing in imitation of a rose, but it is not a blue rose." And even the rich man went away disappointed. Well, no one could match those three things for days and days. But finally, after days had passed, the gardener's son came in, carrying a basket, a closed basket. And he said, "Princess, I know of what you want, and I know of your demand for a blue rose. I have here something to show you that I think may agree with you. For me, I would hope that if I qualify for your hand, that you will come to love me as your father loves you, as your father loves the people of this land, and as he loves the rose garden to which he hopes to retire." And the princess started to object to his phrasing, but he held the basket and opened it so that only she could see into the basket. And she had a puzzled look on her face. And she thought about the things that the young gardener had said. And she said, "Close the basket and walk with me into the garden." And the two of them walked out of the throne room and into the garden for a few minutes. And everyone was chattering and wondering what was going on. And the two of them came back into the throne room. And the princess said, "The young gardener has brought me a blue rose, a true rose, and we will see if we will marry." And everyone cheered, including the king. Well, as it turned out, no one else saw into the basket. But the king asked the older gardener about what his son had done. And he said, has your son been breeding blue roses? And the older gardener said, "No, not that I know of." And they walked out into the rose garden and looked around to see where a flower had been cut. And the only one that looked like it had been trimmed recently was where the gardener had bred the finest white roses in the world. But the princess was happy. The young gardener was happy. The king was very happy. And gradually, after the princess assumed the throne, so were the people of the land. And the king got to retire to his rose garden. And so they all lived happily after. And that is why love isn't so simple as a quote.
Love is not as simple as a quote. Thank you, Nick. And our final storyteller, but not forever, is Adam Malama from Community Storytellers. His quote is, "To love another person is to see the face of God." And here with his story, beginning, middle, and epilogue.
Hello, friends. So happy to be with you here tonight. Her name was Catherine. Catherine. And I had a crush on her. I was a senior in high school, and she was this siren ninth grader. Now, think about that. It's only a 3-year age gap, but it's happening at a time when it feels very dramatic. I was this pretty well established big man on campus, if I do say so myself, and she was a freshman. Looking back, I just didn't realize then. I couldn't see the ways in which she was so lovely and substantive as compared to the tall drinks of disaster I was spending my time with. I remember being in a bookstore once and looking for a great story to tell at forensics and she came in and there she was in her mint green windbreaker and we talked for a long time. We had really substantive conversations. She was grounded, but I was distracted and I had a jealous girlfriend. And I graduated and I moved on with my life, not processing at all her until the middle of the story. In the middle of the story, I'm now a student at DePaul University in Chicago. And at this time, we all had the internet, and none of us had cell phones. We all had email addresses, and only a few people had MySpace. No one had Facebook. That was still 5 years off. So it must have been in some old-fashioned method that I had heard that she had found her way to Valparaiso University as a freshman. She was now only 45 minutes up the road from me. And I thought I should try to find her. Well, in those days, trying to do that and not seem creepy was complicated. My cousin Angie went to Valparaiso, and her email address was a.larson@valparaiso.edu. Okay, perfect. So I fire off an email to k.canuster@valparaiso.edu. It was very innocuous, and I'm certain it was not vulnerable in the least. Something along the lines of like, wow, you're so close. I guess we should hang out. And I heard nothing. So then I thought, like, well, maybe it's a different formula for the freshmen this year. So I tried Catherine underscore Canuster at valparaiso.edu, K dot Canuster at K underscore cat dot Canuster at valparaiso.edu, and I never heard anything. When I would go from Chicago to Grand Rapids, where my family was, I would pass through Valparaiso. I'd make a point to stop at the Taco Bell in that town to get food and just sort of pray that she would walk through the door with Nachos Bel Grande and Destiny on her brain. But that never happened. I'd wait to get gas in my car in Valparaiso, and I'd stand at the pump looking around for her to maybe show up. I'd leave the hose in my gas tank long after the gas was done flowing through it, just waiting, hoping maybe she would come peeling around the corner. And she never did. She had become my own personal Jimmy Hoffa. This story doesn't have an ending. Not in the way we in Western culture like to have endings for our stories. That's why this story doesn't have a happily ever after, but it instead has an epilogue. A few years later, I had moved to Los Angeles, And I was back in Grand Rapids, the town where I grew up. And it was a hot summer night, and I had about an hour to kill before I was meeting up with some friends. And so I was at the Kava House, which was like the original cool coffee house in town, dating all the way back to like, when friends had made coffee houses cool. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just writing away in my journal and I'm looking around and I'm just noticing the people all around me. Like a good storyteller, I'm drinking in all of these details and I'm just scribing it all in the pages of my journal. I'm noticing that it was reaching that late evening moment where the light outside finally started to get darker than the light inside. Sitting over here to my right was a guy in a Hawaiian shirt reading comic books. And so I was writing all about him, and it just seemed almost so stereotypical. I didn't write it down. And over here, there were grad students, portly ones who didn't have time to exercise, and their textbooks were piled high. And again, it was so cliche, I could hardly believe it. And right in front of me, right where the picture window was, at a high top table, there was this young, really good looking couple. And they were having some sort of disagreement. She was crying, and he was awkwardly trying his best to console her. And in that moment, just loving, hovering above mortality, all of a sudden, Catherine Canuster walked through the door. Catherine Canuster was here? Now? We made eye contact and I stood up. If this had been a television show, I would have been sucked through the glass into the story. But I prefer to think that this was a stage play, and I had to leave my seat in the audience to come up onto the stage. The walls of the coffee house flew away like the set from Hello Dolly, and all the players descended into the darkness. The music got quiet, and I walked over to the counter where she stood in a single spotlight. She told me that she was to be married soon and would be moving to Indianapolis to teach second grade. Wow, cool, I think I said. She asked me about me, and I told her my everything. We said to one another, "Oh, it was really good to run into you again." And I knew we really meant it. She got her coffee and she turned to go. And right before she reached the threshold, she turned back to me and she said, I never come back to this city anymore. It's amazing that we ran into each other. And with that, she turned and left. The lights slowly came back up in the coffee house. The players got back to their business. I came back to my table where my journal still sat splayed. The couple in the window had solved whatever problem they were having. But everything was different now. I was different now. I had been able to say goodbye. I'd been able to have the moments that I needed. A few precious moments that allowed her to be now instead the Jimmy Hoffa who said goodbye, or the crush who lingered, or the one who got away. I suppose it doesn't matter. It's the story that finally had an end.
That was a beautiful story of closure. I especially like your line, drinking in all of the details. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for this lovely evening of the stories of love. I'm going to ask the storytellers or tellers tonight to come back on. I'm going to ask you one by one if you have anything upcoming so we can go and hear you and support you because you guys did primo wonderful job. So let's start with number one, who was, oh, it's going to be probably hard for you, Pakarati, but yeah, you did it. You're good at that. Do you have anything coming up?
No, I don't have anything coming up. But yeah, I loved listening to everybody's stories and especially Karen's music. It's gonna echo when I'm going to sleep today.
Okay, Magna, I heard you earlier say something you had.
1 second, Meghna. Yes, sorry.
Hi. Yes, I'm actually in Sacramento, so I don't know how many people are here, but I'm performing at In a Nutshell next Friday at the Sophia Theater in Sacramento in the evening. I'm excited for that. And then also the Women's Storytelling Festival. I'm one of the virtual storytellers, which is in March. So please buy your tickets in case, especially if you're not in Sacramento, you can virtually catch a glimpse of yeah, my and other beautiful stories there. Um, yeah, at this moment, I think I'll just share these two, but it was wonderful listening to each of your stories and honored to be a part of this space. And thank you, Prakriti and Camille, for hosting the space. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And if you'd like, you can put your information in the chat. How about you, Chip?
Um, yeah, thanks. And I'm so sorry to miss your performance at the Sophia Menya. I'm here in Sacramento as well. I'll be out of the country on that date, but it's a fabulous event in a nutshell. Once a month. And yeah, very sorry to miss it. You're one of my favorite storytellers, and good luck. Break a leg. I will be one of the features this coming Saturday in Sacramento at the Sacramento Storytellers Guild at the Poetry Center in Midtown. I'll be doing one poem and telling a different story than I told today. And then I will be on that stage at the Sophia in July. And otherwise, I'll just kind of be around in Northern California.
That's wonderful. I don't think you should tell people to break a leg, though. It would be hard to get up on stage. How about you, John?
I don't have any performances upcoming, but I've got lots of material in development, so hopefully you guys will see me around at some point.
Oh, we hope so. How about you, Karen?
First of all, I want to thank you for including me in this really beautiful evening. Thank you to the organizers. Wonderful emceeing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will be performing this Saturday night as part of the Chennai Storytelling Festival online. I will be telling another different love story, a true story, Saturday night, 8:30 our time. Also, if you want to hear the recording of my workshop that I gave last week on how to add sound effects and music to your storytelling, you can find that on the homepage of the Chennai Storytelling Festival. I will put the information in the link.
Okay, that's wonderful. And that's no lie, 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 lie. Okay, Nick.
Well, at this time of year, I'm actually mostly busy with music projects because I work with that. But in April, the Inland Valley Storytellers are doing their spring concert, and I'll be part of that. And I have to say that if you're in Southern California, that particular one is in one of my two favorite storytelling spaces because it's a beautiful Quaker meeting hall in Claremont that has just wonderful acoustics and seating, and it's just a beautiful place to tell stories. And the place we do our Celebration concert in the fall is my other favorite place because it's in a music store and museum that was founded by a storyteller. So it's like if you're anywhere near Claremont, look for the storytelling events there because they're in such great spaces.
Thank you, Nick. And Adam.
Let me unmute. Okay, yes. So I have the great privilege and honor of appearing at the San Diego Storytelling Festival on March the 21st. So if you're looking for an excuse to come down to that magical town, come on down. It's going to be wonderful. And then I'm very, very pleased that I'll be appearing at the NSN conference this summer in Amarillo, Texas. I'll be doing some of my standard fare, but the thing that I'm most excited about is that Alton Chung and I are going to be partnering together to tell our World War II stories. So he and I both have a collection of World War II stories, and we're going to be kind of telling together in tandem. So really, really looking forward to that. So if you've been on the fence, should I go to Amarillo? Should I not go to Amarillo? The answer is yes, you should go to Amarillo. And we'll hopefully see you all there. Thank you for including me tonight. This was a delight.
Is that where
That
you
was-
are, Adam? San Diego?
No, I'm in Los Angeles, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
Thank you so much, Adam, and thank you, storytellers, for all your effort tonight and all that you're doing to continue to do. Continue to inspire and encourage us. We love it, and we love you. And everybody have a good rest of your evening, and take care.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.